The first thing you need to know is that I never meant to let her kiss me. The second thing you need to know is that once she did, I understood every love song I had ever illustrated a cover for, every windswept woman gazing at a distant shore, every pair of hands reaching toward each other across impossible space. I understood all of it viscerally. In the 4 seconds Camille Rhodes pressed her lips to mine and then pulled away like she had merely proven a weather forecast. It started as an argument the way most of the important things in my life have started. We were on the couch, the one with the green velvet cushion that is slightly lopsided on the left side because Camille sat on it wrong for 6 months and refused to admit it. She was eating cereal at 11 at night. Her third bowl, I was not counting, except I was. And I was trying to finish a preliminary sketch for a client who needed a coastal romance cover by Thursday. "I'm just saying," Camille said, gesturing at my sketch pad with her spoon in a way that sent a small spray of oat milk toward my arm. "You make it sound so profound, like kissing a woman is this whole mystical spiritual event that mere mortals cannot comprehend." I didn't say that. I wiped my arm with the edge of my hoodie. Her hoodie, actually. She had given it to me 6 months ago when my last ex left it at my apartment, and I was too sad to do laundry, and now it lived on me. "You implied it." Camille tucked her feet under her on the cushion and fixed me with that look she has, the one where her brown eyes go a little narrow and her mouth tilts up on one side like she has already won. "You said it was different, qualitatively different, that there's chemistry you can feel in the room before anyone even touches anyone." "That's true. That's dramatic." I looked up from my sketch. "You've never kissed a woman, Camille." "I know what kissing is." "Not the same." She was quiet for a moment, which with Camille always means she is reformulating. Her cereal was going soggy. I could see it from where I was sitting. She would complain about soggy cereal in approximately 4 minutes, and I would not feel sorry for her because I had told her twice to eat faster. "Okay," she said finally. "Prove it." I stared at her. "Prove what, exactly?" "That it's different." She set the bowl down on our coffee table next to a half-dead fern we had named Gerald and turned to face me fully. Her dark hair was in a messy knot at the top of her head, and she was wearing an oversized University of Michigan t-shirt that belonged to a man she had stopped seeing 3 weeks ago. She looked carelessly, infuriatingly beautiful. She always did. "You've been telling me for months that I wouldn't understand." "Fine. Demonstrate." "You're not serious." "I'm extremely serious. I'm a firm believer in empirical evidence, Nora." "You got a C in biology." "I got a C-, and that professor was biased." She shifted closer on the couch. Something in my chest tightened like a fist closing around a small, fragile thing. "Come on, one kiss. I'm not going to make it weird. I just want to understand what you're always describing." I should have said no. I know that now. I think I knew it then. But there is something about Camille that has always made me forget what I know. She has this quality of complete conviction, like whatever she is saying is so obviously reasonable that disagreement would be the strange response. I had spent 22 months being her roommate, and I still had not built up sufficient immunity. "Fine," I said, and I heard how flat my voice went, how I made it sound like I was the one doing her a favor. She leaned in. I tell myself I was ready. I was not ready. Her mouth was soft. That was the first thing, shockingly, unbearably soft and warm, and she smelled like the vanilla lotion she kept on the bathroom shelf, and something else underneath it that was just her, just Camille, and the kiss lasted maybe 4 seconds, but each second was its own complete universe. She pulled back. I did not move. She was very still too, for just a moment. Her eyes were a little unfocused. Then she blinked and made a sound that was trying very hard to be casual. "See," she said. "Kissing. Normal. Not mystical." "Right," I said. I looked back at my sketchpad. My hand was not steady enough to draw. Before I continue, if you enjoyed the story, I share lots of steamy, uncensored stories on my Patreon page, which is linked in the description. Details are in the description and comments. Be careful. It's very, very hot inside. I did not sleep that night. I lay in my room, which is separated from Camille's room by a narrow hallway and a shared bathroom, and I stared at the ceiling, which has a water stain in the upper left corner shaped vaguely like a rabbit, and I thought about the fact that I had known I was in love with my roommate for approximately 7 months, and I had done an excellent job of managing it, And now I was ruined. Not because the kiss was bad, because it was exactly what I had imagined. That is the cruelest kind of confirmation. The kind where you find out you were right about the thing you most needed to be wrong about. I heard her in the bathroom at 2 a.m. The pipes in our apartment are old and vocal, and I had memorized the rhythm of her nighttime routines, the way you memorize something you never meant to learn. She ran the water for approximately 40 seconds longer than usual. That was the only sign. By morning, she had decided nothing had happened. I watched her make coffee, which she did badly. She always put too much water in the French press, and it came out thin and pale as dishwater, and she handed me a mug and said, "There's a farmer's market on Clement Street this weekend. Do you want to go?" And I said, "Sure," and that was that. We went to the farmer's market. We bought peaches and sourdough and a small succulent she named Bernard to keep Gerald company. She took my arm when the crowd got thick near the jam stand. I let her. I was an idiot. My best friend June found out because June always finds out. She has an uncanny ability to extract information through ordinary seeming questions, like a magician pulling a specific card from a deck by asking you to just think about it. We were at her kitchen table 2 weeks after the kiss, drinking actual good coffee because June owns a proper espresso machine, and she said, without looking up from her phone, "Something happened with Camille." "What makes you say that?" "You have the look. I don't have a look." June looked up. She is 30 years old with extremely short natural hair and dangling moon earrings and the expression of a woman who has been friends with me since we were both 19 and has a complete catalog of my facial expressions organized by category. "Nora, you have the look where something happened that you are trying very hard to process privately so you don't have to admit you warned yourself about it." I put my mug down. She kissed me. June closed her eyes for a moment. "Okay. To prove a point." Of course she did. And it was... I stopped, tried again. "It wasn't nothing, June." "No." June set her phone face down on the table. "I know. She's straight. She says she's straight. That's the same thing." "It really isn't," June said, not unkindly. I pressed both hands around my mug. Outside June's kitchen window, the city was gray and damp and perfectly indifferent to my feelings. She acted like it didn't happen. Like it was just this little experiment and the results were inconclusive. And you? I acted the same. And inside? I looked at the table. Inside, I felt like someone had finally told me what my own name sounded like when someone else said it right. June was quiet for a beat. Then she said, "Okay, sweetheart, you need to go on a date." "June, not to forget her. I know you won't forget her. But you need to be around someone who is not afraid of wanting you, someone whose attraction to you is not a surprise to herself." She tapped the table once. "There's an opening at the Meridian Gallery next Saturday. Queer Artist Collective. I got an extra invitation." "I'm not going to a gallery opening to meet someone. You're going to a gallery opening because you love art and you've been hiding in that apartment doing book covers and pining for a woman who borrowed your emotional warmth like a hot water bottle." She pointed at me. "And if you happen to meet someone interesting, that is a bonus." I went. The Meridian Gallery occupied the ground floor of a building on Valencia Street that used to be a hardware store and still had the original tin ceiling, painted white now, and the light that evening was warm and amber, and the art on the walls was strange and beautiful. Abstract textile pieces by a woman named Lena Foe, who painted directly onto woven fabric. I was standing in front of a piece that was all deep indigo and burnt orange, a spiral that looked like it was either collapsing or expanding depending on how long you looked at it, when someone came to stand beside me. "It changes every time I look away," she said. I glanced over. She was tall, with warm brown skin and natural hair pulled back loosely, and she was wearing a green dress the color of sea glass, and she was looking at the painting with genuine attention, not the performed attention people do at gallery events. "I think it's intentional," I said. "The way the threads go in opposite directions in the center. Your eye can't decide which way to travel." She turned to look at me then. She had dark, careful eyes and a slow smile. "Are you an artist?" "Book cover illustrator. I love art, but I make it very commercially." I said it the way I always said it, apologetically, and she shook her head. "Book covers are art. I've stared at covers longer than I've stared at gallery pieces sometimes." She extended a hand. "Elise Monroe." "Nora Bellamy." We talked for 40 minutes. She was a landscape architect who had grown up in Portland and moved to the city for a firm she now ran with a partner. She was 32 in April, she collected vintage maps, she had a rescue cat named Fig, and she was recently out of a long relationship in a way that was sad but not raw, like a healed scar she touched sometimes just to remember. She was composed and warm, and she asked me questions like she actually wanted the answers. When we left, she asked for my number. Not in the aggressive way some people do, like they're filing paperwork. In a quiet, genuine way, standing on the sidewalk while the city moved around us, like she was asking something she meant. I gave it to her. I walked home feeling something I had not expected. The small, tentative glow of being wanted by someone who knew what wanting meant. I was in a good mood when I got back to the apartment, the best mood I had been in since the kiss. I could feel it in my face, a looseness I wasn't used to carrying. Camille was on the couch again, this time with a glass of wine and her laptop, and she looked up when I came in. How was the gallery thing? Good. I hung my jacket by the door. Really good, actually. I met someone. The shift in Camille's face was small. She covered it fast, but I had 22 months of experience watching her face, and I caught it. A slight tension around the eyes, a tightening of the mouth, quickly replaced by an expression of bright, performed interest. Oh yeah? Another artist? Landscape architect. Her name is Elise. Elise. She repeated the name like she was testing its texture. Is she cute? Very. She looked back at her laptop. That's great. I went to make tea. I could feel her not looking at me from across the apartment, which is somehow more noticeable than being looked at. I kept my back to her and waited for the kettle. Did she ask you out? She asked for my number. We're probably going for coffee. Coffee. Another pause. Nora, you hate coffee dates. You always say they're too short to really get to know someone. I like her enough to try. Silence. The kettle clicked off. I poured my water and felt the absence of whatever Camille was about to say, and didn't. Just be careful, she said finally. I turned around. Of what? I don't know. You just met her. That's how meeting people works, Camille. She looked at me. Her wine glass was held loosely in one hand and her laptop had gone dim. I'm just saying, don't rush. I took my tea to my room. I did not say what I was thinking, which was, you kissed me and then acted like nothing happened, and now I've met someone kind and available, and you want to tell me not to rush. Elise and I had coffee at a small place on 24th Street with mismatched tile floors and good pastries. She was even easier to talk to in daylight. She asked about my work and I showed her the covers on my phone, and she looked at each one properly, not just swiping, actually looking. When she asked which one was my favorite and I pointed to a quiet literary novel cover I'd done, all fog and a single lantern, she said, "You made something lonely feel like a doorway." And I felt seen in a way that was gentle and completely uncomplicated. We were there for 2 hours. When I came home, Camille was cooking pasta in a way that suggested she had been waiting. She had made enough for 2 and she immediately said, I made too much, obviously, which she always said when she had made exactly the right amount for 2 people. I ate with her. We watched something on TV. She fell asleep against my shoulder before the second episode ended, the way she sometimes did, her breathing going deep and even, her hair fanning across my collarbone. I stayed very still. I thought about Elise's uncomplicated open warmth. I thought about the way Camille's weight against my side felt like home and like agony in equal measure. I thought about the kiss. I carefully maneuvered out from under her, put a blanket over her legs, and went to bed. June texted me at midnight. How was the coffee with Elise? I wrote back, good. She's genuinely nice. June, and? Me. And Camille stayed up and made pasta for 2 and then fell asleep on me. June, Nora. Me, I know. June, you need to set a boundary. Me, I know. June, I mean an actual boundary, not the kind you set and then immediately let her walk through because she looks at you. I put the phone face down on my nightstand and stared at the ceiling and the rabbit-shaped water stain and thought, okay, June is completely right, and also I have no idea how to do that. Elise and I went on 3 more dates over the following 2 weeks. A bookstore reading by a poet she liked in the Mission. Dinner at a Burmese place on Larkin Street. A Sunday afternoon walking around the botanical gardens in the park where she knew the names of plants and told me about landscape decisions like they were love letters written to the earth. She was genuinely wonderful. Every time I came home from seeing her, Camille was slightly more prickly than she had been the time before. She started asking about my outfit before I left, not the way a friend asks, with enthusiasm, the way someone asks when they are trying to calibrate something. "You're wearing that?" said in a neutral tone that was not neutral. Or, "Didn't you wear that top last week?" When she had absolutely no way of knowing when I had last worn anything because she was famously unconcerned with laundry schedules. Or, once, standing in the kitchen doorway while I was touching up my eyeliner in the bathroom, "She must really like you. You never used to wear eyeliner on weeknights." "People can try new things," I said into the mirror. "I'm just making an observation." "Make it somewhere else." She disappeared from the doorway. I found her 10 minutes later sitting on the kitchen counter, eating crackers in a pointed way, which with Camille means she is bothered and doesn't want to say why. "We're still on for Thursday movie night?" she said. "I don't have plans Thursday. Just checking, since you've been busy." I pulled my jacket from the hook. "I go on dates 2 evenings a week. You have the apartment to yourself 3 full nights more than usual. You could have people over. You could call Theo." She made a face. "I'm not calling Theo." "Then call someone else." "I don't want to call someone else," she said, and then seemed to hear herself because she looked away and ate another cracker. I left. The cracker energy kept escalating. She texted me while I was at dinner with Elise to ask if we had oat milk because she thought we were out. We were not out of oat milk. I knew this because I had bought oat milk 2 days ago and had been the only one using it. She texted again 20 minutes later to say, never mind, she found it. Then again to send me a screenshot of something she found funny, which is something she did when she wanted to make contact without admitting she wanted to make contact. Elise watched me silence my phone. She said very gently, "Is that your roommate?" "Yes." "She texts a lot. She's having a strange few weeks." Elise studied me for a moment. She had the quality of paying attention without making it feel like an interrogation. "Can I ask something personal?" "Sure." "The roommate. Is there something there?" I wanted to say no automatically. Instead, I took a breath. "It's complicated." "Okay." She said it simply, without accusation. "I'm going to be honest with you, Nora, because I think you're worth honesty. I like you. I've liked spending time with you, and I want to keep doing that. But I also think there's a part of you that's not entirely here." It landed gently and accurately, the way true things do. I put my fork down. "I'm sorry." "Don't apologize. Just think about it." She reached across the table and touched my hand briefly, warm and without expectation. "I'm not going anywhere, but I'm not interested in being the kind of presence someone chooses because the person they actually want is unavailable. I've been that before. It wasn't fun for either of us." I walked home from Elise's neighborhood along the Embarcadero, the bay on my left, the city lights reflected in the water, the November wind cold enough to make my eyes water. I thought about what she said. I thought about deserving to be chosen completely. I had always believed in that, theoretically, lived it less well in practice. I thought about Camille. The apartment was lit when I got home, which meant she was awake, which at 11:45 on a Tuesday meant she was waiting. She was at the kitchen table with her laptop open and a mug of tea she had made, and I saw immediately that it was my tea. My specific chamomile and ginger blend that I kept on the second shelf. She never drank chamomile. She thought it tasted like a field. "Hey," she said without looking up. "How was it?" "Fine." I hung my jacket. I went to the sink and got water. I was aware of the weight of what Elise had said and the weight of Camille in my peripheral vision, and the fact that I was tired of managing both of them simultaneously. "Just fine?" "Camille." "What?" I turned around. "Why are you drinking my tea?" She looked at the mug. "I couldn't sleep." "You don't like chamomile." "I'm expanding my palate." She looked up at me then, and something in her expression was almost sheepish, and underneath the sheepishness was something rawer that she was working hard to cover. Was it good? With Elise? "She's a good person." "That's not what I asked." "I know." She wrapped both hands around my mug and looked at the table. Her nail polish was chipping on the left hand. Raspberry red she'd put on herself. She'd done mine too the same afternoon, sitting on the bathroom floor with a cotton ball tucked between her toes. I still had traces of it on my right index finger. "I don't like how much time you're spending with her," she said. I took a very careful breath. "Why?" "Because you're my—" She stopped, started again. "We barely see each other." "We live together, Camille. We see each other every morning and most evenings. I went out 4 times in 3 weeks." "It's different." "How?" She didn't answer. I stood there and I felt the conversation reaching the edge of something, the way you feel the air change before rain, a pressure shift. "It's different," she said again, quieter, and she would not look at me. I sat down across from her. The kitchen was warm, the overhead light making everything golden, and she looked at me finally, and I looked back at her and I said, more calmly than I felt, "Camille, why did you kiss me?" The color shifted in her face. "I told you, to prove a point." "What point did you prove?" She opened her mouth, closed it. "That kissing isn't—" "Don't," I said. "Don't finish that sentence the way you were going to finish it. Tell me the truth." She was quiet for a long time. Outside, a car passed on the street below, its light sliding across the kitchen window. Gerald the fern cast a small shadow on the wall. "I don't know," she said, and I believed her, and it hurt more than a lie would have. "Okay," I said, "but here's what I know." I kept my voice steady. "It cost me something. You kissed me, and I'm not able to just put that in a box and leave it there, and you've been acting strange since I started seeing Elise. And I don't know what you think you're doing, but I do know what it does to me, and I can't keep doing this. You don't get to kiss me and confuse me and then act like you're the one being abandoned when I try to be with someone who actually knows what she wants." The silence after was different from the silence before. Camille's hands were still around my mug. She looked like she was holding something that would break if she let go. "I'm not trying to abandon you." "I know." I pushed my chair back and stood up. "I just need you to know that I'm not going to keep being the one who has to manage this. Okay? I can't be your comfort and your experiment and your best friend and the person you get to be jealous about all at the same time. It's too much." I went to my room. I sat on my bed in the dark and pressed my hands together in my lap and breathed until my chest stopped hurting. 3 days later, Camille came home, smelling like someone else's cologne, and I knew she had been on a date. I was at my desk working on a preliminary sketch, and she came in and was louder than usual, describing a restaurant she'd been to in the marina, a man named Theo she'd run into again. How funny he was, how he had this job doing something with sports analytics. She couldn't quite explain it. I kept drawing. My lines were slightly off. I would have to fix them. "He wants to do it again," she said from the kitchen, where she was opening the fridge with the specificity of someone who has already decided they are not hungry. "Go out, I mean. He's pretty cute. You'd probably agree, actually, objectively." I said. "Are you even listening?" "I'm working." She came to lean in the doorway of the little nook off the living room where I had set up my desk. She was still in her going-out outfit, a silk blouse I'd always liked on her, and her lipstick was slightly worn off in the center, the way it gets. She looked at me and I looked at my sketchpad, and neither of us said the obvious thing. "He has a friend," she offered. "If you want to—" "I'm seeing Elise." "Right." A pause. "How's that going?" "Good." Another pause. "Is it serious?" I looked up then. She met my gaze with an expression I could not entirely read, not because it was hidden, but because it contained too many things at once, an attempt at nonchalance, and underneath it something hopeful and scared and guilty all at the same time, like someone standing at the edge of a decision they haven't made yet. "We're taking it at whatever pace it goes," I said. She nodded and went to her room. I heard her door close. I heard her moving around, the sounds I knew as well as my own. Closet opening, shoes dropped, the soft thud of her bed as she sat on it. Then silence. I erased the line I'd drawn 3 times trying to get right and accepted that I was not going to be useful to my client tonight. The following Saturday was a rooftop party at a friend of Camille's named Dahlia. A birthday party, string lights and folding tables and wine in plastic cups, and a view of the bay that was worth every flight of stairs. June came with me. Camille had invited us both. which meant Camille had been in a good mood when she invited us and was now in the more complex kind of mood she got when she was near me in a social setting and feeling things she didn't have a name for yet. Elise came too. I had mentioned the party casually and she had accepted casually, and I was aware of the calculus of having both of them in the same place. They met near the folding table with the birthday cake. I introduced them and watched Camille's expression do something complicated in real time. She smiled very naturally, which meant the smile was not natural at all. Elise was warm and easy, as she always was, and said she'd heard Camille and I had been roommates for almost 2 years and that it sounded like a good partnership. "It works for us," Camille said, and touched my arm once lightly and let go. We separated into different orbits on the rooftop. June pulled me aside near the low wall with the view and handed me a cup of wine and said very quietly, "She's going to combust. She's fine. Nora, she has touched you 4 times in the last 40 minutes. I counted. She's tactile. She's jealous." I looked across the rooftop. Camille was talking to Dahlia, but her gaze moved to where Elise and I had been standing and found nothing, because Elise was now getting cake with the birthday group, and Camille's gaze moved until it found me. I looked away. "She went out with Theo," I said. "I know, she told me. She also told me he was extremely nice and she had spent the whole drive home trying to figure out why she felt nothing." June sipped her wine. Those were her exact words. She said, "I have no idea why I feel absolutely nothing. He's perfectly lovely." And then she changed the subject. I felt something shift in my chest. Not triumph, something sadder. "June, I'm not saying you should wait for her. I think you should protect yourself. I think Elise is genuinely good for you, and you should take that seriously." She paused. "I'm just telling you what's happening on the other side of the equation. The other side of the equation is a woman who identifies as straight. The other side of the equation is a woman who hasn't been honest with herself yet." June looked at me steadily. "Those aren't the same thing either. You know that." I knew that. That night, walking home, Elise had taken a car, June had gone to meet someone, Camille and I had walked the 4 blocks back in the cold because neither of us wanted to call a car and end the evening definitively. Camille was quiet in a way that had texture. The street was wet from earlier rain, neon signs reflected in puddles, our footsteps in sync without either of us trying. Halfway down our block, she said, "She likes you." "Elise?" "Yes. A lot. I can tell." "Okay. Does she make you happy?" I thought about how to answer honestly. "She makes me feel calm, safe, like I don't have to manage anything." Camille was quiet for half a block. "That's good." "Yeah. You deserve that." I stopped walking. She stopped a step ahead of me and turned back. The street light made her look a little like a photograph, the kind taken at night with a long exposure, everything slightly luminous. "Camille, what are you doing?" "I'm walking home." "That's not what I mean." She opened her mouth and I watched her choose something safe, and I said, before she could deliver it, "Never mind, let's go home." We went upstairs. We made toast, because we always made toast when we got home from parties. It was a thing that had started by accident and become ritual. I put butter on mine and she put jam on hers, and we ate standing at the kitchen counter without speaking, and it was comfortable in the way that things that have grown too familiar to be anything else are comfortable. And I thought, this is what I am protecting when I refuse to blow everything up. This toast, this counter, this woman and her raspberry jam. But I was also thinking about what Elise had said, about being wanted halfway, about how that is still its own kind of loneliness. November turned toward December. I finished 3 book covers and started a 4th. Elise and I had dinner at her apartment for the first time, which was exactly as elegant as I expected, and softer than I expected. Plants on every windowsill, a record player she actually used, Fig the rescue cat sitting on my feet like he had made a decision about me. She poured wine and we sat on her couch, and the evening was very lovely, and I was there and not entirely there, and she knew it. She said softly, "I want to tell you something, and I want you to know it comes from a place of genuine affection." I looked at her. "I think you are in love with your roommate," she said. I did not deny it, and I think she has feelings for you that she hasn't understood yet. And I think you are trying very hard to be fair to both of us and yourself, and that's—" She smiled a little. That's very you from what I can tell. You're very fair, Nora. You're careful with people's feelings. Elise? No, let me finish. I like you enormously. I think in another version of this we might be something real. She touched my hand. But I'm not interested in being the woman someone chooses while hoping something else resolves itself. Not because I don't think you're worth the mess, because I know I'm worth not being second. You are, I said, and my voice broke a little. You are completely worth that. I know. She squeezed my hand and let go. So figure it out, Nora. And then, if you want, come find me, but go figure it out. I walked to the 24th Street BART station in the cold dark and I cried a little, not because I had lost Elise exactly, but because she was right, and being right about something painful costs something, even when you didn't cause the pain. I texted Camille from the platform, coming home. Still up? She wrote back in under a minute. Yes. Want toast? I almost laughed. I wrote back, no, I want to talk. 3 dots appeared and disappeared twice before she wrote, okay. She was on the couch when I got home, legs tucked under her, no TV, which was the tell. Camille, without a screen going, was Camille who was prepared to actually pay attention. She had made tea. 2 mugs, which she had placed on the coffee table. Mine was chamomile. She had used my shelf. I sat down across from her, not beside her. I needed the distance. I ended things with Elise, I said. Her expression did something complicated. She said quickly, Nora, you didn't have to... She ended it, actually, gently and correctly. I looked at her, because she could tell I was in love with someone else. The silence was thorough. Camille looked at the tea on the table. Nora... I'm not saying this to pressure you, I said. I'm saying it because I'm exhausted of pretending it isn't true. I took a breath. I love you. I've been in love with you for months, and I have tried very hard to make peace with it being unrequited, and I've tried to move on, and I am not going to keep managing this quietly in my own head while you borrow my hoodies and make me toast and kiss me to prove points and then date men you feel nothing for. I can't. She was very still. I'm not asking you to feel something you don't feel, I said. I know you've always said you're straight, and I believe that you believe that. But I need you to be honest with me about what you're actually doing when you act like... I gestured at the space between us, at the 2 mugs of tea, at the whole apartment. Like this. She looked up. Her eyes were bright and she was pressing her lips together in the way she did when she was holding something back. I'm scared, she said. I know. I don't... She stopped, started again. I've always been straight. I've been straight my whole life. I've dated men. I've been attracted to men. I don't know what this... She pressed a hand to her sternum flat, like she was trying to locate something inside herself. I don't know what to call this. You don't have to call it anything tonight. But you need an answer. I need honesty, I said. Tonight. An answer can take longer. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said quietly, when you came home from your dates with Elise, I felt sick. Not jealous exactly. More like... She searched for it. More like something I was supposed to have done hadn't been done, like I had missed something important and it was getting further away. She looked down. I went out with Theo because I thought if I felt it again, the normal thing, the expected thing, it would make sense again. It would sort itself out. Did it? No. Okay. I don't know what I am, she said, and her voice was stripped of everything performative. It was just her underneath it. I know how I feel when I'm with you. I know that I... She stopped. Then she said it. I know that I think about you constantly, Nora. I know that I don't know how to fall asleep when you're not in the apartment. I know that the night you went to Elise's for dinner, I sat on the couch for 3 hours and I couldn't tell you why. She shook her head. But I don't know what that means for who I am. It doesn't have to mean everything immediately, I said, but I can't be around while you figure it out from inside this. I looked at the apartment. I'll stay at June's for a while. Her face fell. Nora, not as punishment, because I need to not be in this every day while you're still deciding whether the thing you feel is something you're willing to act on. I deserve that much. She pressed her mouth together and nodded. Okay. I packed a bag that night. She stood in my doorway while I did it, leaning against the frame in her socks. She never wore socks voluntarily. She only put them on when she was cold enough to capitulate. And she watched me fold things and put them in my overnight bag, and she did not say anything until I was almost done. And then she said, "Take your blue hoodie. You'll want it." She meant the hoodie that had been hers, that had become mine, that she wore sometimes anyway. I folded it and put it in. She walked me to the door. She said, "I know I haven't been fair to you. You haven't. I'm going to think," she said, "actually think, not just about what I feel, about whether I can be brave enough to—" She stopped. "Take care of yourself, Camille." I left. June's apartment was small and had a very comfortable couch and a cat named absolutely nothing because June felt names were reductive for animals. The cat sat on my feet the same way Fig had, which I found oddly comforting. I worked. I finished the Coastal Romance cover and sent it, and then I started on a new series, historical fiction, all warm browns and faded greens, and the work was good and steady and requiring of complete attention, which helped. I did not contact Camille for 4 days, which was the longest we had gone without contact in 2 years. On the 4th day, she sent me a picture of Gerald the fern, which had dropped 2 more leaves. Below it, she wrote, "He misses you. Objective evidence." I wrote back, "Water him less. He's drowning." She wrote, "This is exactly the problem. I can't do anything right without your instructions." I stared at that for a while. Then I wrote, "You'll figure it out." She sent a single period, which with Camille meant she had written something and deleted it. On day 7, June sat across from me at her breakfast table and said, "She called me." I looked up from my sketch pad. "Camille?" "Yesterday. We talked for 45 minutes. June wrapped her hands around her mug. "I'm going to tell you what she said because I think you deserve to know. She asked me things about identity, about what it means if the thing you feel has always been there but you've categorized it wrong, about whether it's possible to have loved every man she dated and still have this," June made a gesture, "thing she has for you at the same time," and I said yes. Obviously yes. I was very quiet. And she cried a little, which, for Camille, means she really meant it. I pressed my thumbnail to the edge of my sketch pad. "What did you tell her?" I told her that labels don't always come with instruction manuals. And I told her that figuring out who she is doesn't mean she gets Nora automatically, that she has to decide whether she's ready to be someone who can love you properly, not secretly, not halfway. Did she say anything to that? She said, June said carefully, that she was pretty sure she had been in love with you longer than she realized, and that she had been calling it something else because it was easier. My throat went tight. She also said, June added, that she has something she wants to do at your gallery opening on Friday, which is in 3 days, by the way, and I assume you haven't forgotten. I had not forgotten. A small group show at a gallery in the Dog Patch, a queer artists collective event I had contributed 3 framed prints to. It had been on the calendar for 2 months. I had assumed I would go with June and maybe Elise, and it would be a pleasant, complicated evening. "What does she want to do?" I asked. She didn't tell me exactly. She said she wanted to do something right. I thought about that for the rest of the week. The gallery was a converted warehouse space with high ceilings and good lighting, and my 3 prints were hung on the east wall near the entrance, which was a good placement. June arrived with me and made the appropriate enthusiastic noises about the work and got us drinks, and we moved around the space talking to people, and I was having a reasonably good time, a calm and manageable time, until Camille arrived. I saw her from across the room. She was dressed carefully, which was different from her usual beautiful carelessness. A silk blouse the color of deep water, dark trousers, her hair down in the way she mostly kept it up. She had dressed like she was coming somewhere that mattered. She scanned the room and found me the way I always secretly clocked when she found me in a crowd, that small adjustment of her whole body toward me like a compass needle. She came directly to where I was standing. "Hi," she said. "Hi." She glanced at my prints on the wall. "They look incredible. The framing is exactly right. Thank you for coming." "Of course." She turned back to me. She had a glass of sparkling water. She was not drinking, which also felt significant. "Can I?" She glanced around. Elise was across the room. I had seen her come in earlier. They had not interacted. June was 15 feet away and definitely listening. "Can I say something?" "Sure." She took a breath, and I watched her gather herself in the way I had seen her gather herself before pitching herself for a client or a job, but different, because this was not a pitch. There was nothing practiced about it. Her hands were not quite steady. "I am not straight," she said. "Or not only straight. Or," she exhaled, "I am a woman who had a very convenient story about herself for a long time and kept choosing men because they fit the story and didn't make me feel terrified. And I was terrified of you from the beginning. Not badly, not the way you'd want to run, the way you want to stay completely still and not move in case you break something." She looked at me. "I kissed you to prove a point because I wanted to kiss you, and I couldn't admit that. So I turned it into an argument. That was cowardly, and I'm sorry." I did not say anything yet. I let her finish. "I went out with Theo because I was scared of the alternative, and then I sat in the car afterward for 20 minutes because it felt like I had done something wrong by going. Not to him, to you, to myself." She shook her head once. "I don't fully have words for what I am yet, for the label part, but I have very clear words for how I feel about you specifically, Nora, and I should have led with those instead of the other thing." "What are those words?" I asked. My voice was steady. My hands were not. "That I want you," she said simply. "That when you left the apartment, I realized I had been relying on you being there the way you rely on a wall being solid, not thinking about it, just assuming it would hold you up. And then it wasn't there, and I understood that it hadn't been a wall at all. It had been—" She looked for the word. "It had been something I had actively chosen and never acknowledged choosing. I want to choose it out loud. I want to choose you out loud." She glanced briefly at the room, the people around us, and then looked back at me. "Here, in front of June, who I know is listening, in front of your work on the wall, in whatever room you want." I heard June make a very quiet noise behind me that she converted into clearing her throat. My heart was doing something large and irregular in my chest. I said, "Camille, if I come home—" "Then you come home to someone who is not going to pretend this is something small or confusing or temporary. I need it to be real," I said. "Not a feeling you have when you're scared. A decision." "It's both," she said. "I think for things that matter, it's always both." I looked at her. I looked at the way she was holding herself, not performing confidence, actually nervous, actually present, actually here in a room full of people with her water glass and her deep blue blouse, and all of her fear visible on her face and not flinching from it. I stepped toward her. She breathed out slowly. I said, "You owe me 2 years of almost." "I know." She reached up and touched my face, very gently, fingertips at my jaw. "Let me pay it." I kissed her. Not the way she had kissed me on the couch, brief and experimental and retreating. This was slow and deliberate and completely mutual, her hand cupping my face and mine finding the front of her blouse, and the whole room continued to exist around us, but it was distant. It was wallpaper. When we pulled back, she was very close and her eyes were open, and they were clear in a way they hadn't been in months. The particular clarity of someone who has put down something heavy they did not realize they were carrying. "Okay," I said softly. "Yeah." Her forehead came down to touch mine. "Yeah." June said, from slightly closer than expected, "Finally. I am sincerely relieved. You're both unbelievably slow." Camille laughed, and I laughed, and she kept her hand on my face, and the gallery and the prints and the people continued around us, and none of it felt complicated anymore. Just real. We went home together that night, walking the same streets we had always walked, the city doing what cities do in December, which is glow with slightly more purpose than usual. She took my hand on the Mooney platform and held it the whole ride, not loosely, not tentatively, like she meant to. At the apartment door, while she was finding her keys, she said, "I told my sister." I looked at her. "When?" "This morning. I called her." She found the key. I said, "There's someone I'm in love with, and she's my roommate, and she's a woman, and I have apparently been in love with her for longer than I've been honest about." She pushed the door open. My sister said, "It's about time. You've been weird about your roommate since you moved in." She said that? Verbatim. She grinned. Apparently it was obvious to everyone except me. And June, I said. It was obvious to June. June is terrifyingly perceptive. Yes. We went inside. The apartment felt different, not because anything had changed physically. Gerald the fern was still on the coffee table, missing 3 leaves. The lopsided couch cushion was still lopsided. My desk was still slightly too close to the window, and hers was still covered in a geological stratum of notebooks and receipts and hair ties. Everything was the same. It just felt inhabited differently, like a room after a window has been opened. She made tea. Properly this time, asking which one I wanted, using the right shelf. She made herself something with ginger and lemon that she had decided she liked when I wasn't looking, apparently. We sat on the couch, not far apart and drifting toward each other the way we always had, careful of something unnamed. Just together, her shoulder against mine, my feet tucked up, her knee touching my knee. "I'm sorry it took me so long," she said. "You were working something out." "I should have worked it out faster." "You got there," I said. She tilted her head to look at me sideways. "Are we really okay?" "We're going to be." I leaned my head against hers. "We have to figure out what we are to each other now." "I think we're the same thing we've always been," she said, "but without all the lying." I thought about that. That's a good way to put it. Outside, the city did what the city did, indifferent and luminous, and Gerald the fern stood in his pot shedding leaves with complete dignity, and somewhere in the apartment the floor creaked in that familiar place by the hallway, and the radiator made its usual sound, and Camille was warm against my side in my hoodie. Her hoodie, my hoodie, we had stopped counting, and I felt something settle in my chest that had been unsettled for so long I had almost forgotten what settled felt like. It felt like this. In the morning, she was still there. That was the thing I kept coming back to. She was still there. I woke before she did, pale winter light coming through the gap in the curtains, and she was asleep with one arm over my waist and her face turned toward me, and her expression was unguarded in the way sleeping faces are, and I stayed very still and looked at her and I thought, there she is, not the performance of certainty, not the armor of casual beauty. Just Camille, asleep in December light, with her eyelashes and her messy hair and the faint line from the pillow on her cheek. She woke slowly, the way she always did, which was infuriatingly graceful compared to my own process. Her eyes opened and found mine, and she lay still for a moment, looking. And then she smiled, a real one, not the magazine cover smile she could produce on demand, the smaller, genuine one. "Hi," she said. "Hi. Is this okay?" "This is very okay." She stretched and then settled back against me and said, into the warmth of the morning, "I want to do it right, all of it, whatever that means." A pause. "I might have to figure some things out about myself as I go." That's allowed. "I don't have a fully formed answer to what I am yet. You don't need one." "I need to not be afraid," she said, "of what people will think. My mother is going to have a whole series of reactions." "She will," I agreed, "but I'm not going to hide it." She said it firmly, making a decision in real time. "I don't want to be someone who loves you when the door is closed." "Good. That's the most important part." "Yes," I said. She traced a shape on my arm, thoughtless, just her fingers moving. Outside, rain had started, the soft, persistent December kind, tapping the window with gentle insistence. I could smell coffee already, we must have left the timer on, and the apartment was warm. And Gerald the fern stood on the coffee table in his silent, beleaguered way, and Camille's breathing was slow and even against my shoulder, and I thought about 2 mugs of chamomile tea and toast, after parties and raspberry jam and hoodies and 22 months of almost. I thought about the kiss that was supposed to prove nothing. She pressed her lips to my temple, warm and unhurried, and stayed there. I thought, and the one that proved everything.